Hi everyone, I'm Lane from Paris Off Script, here once again in my kitchen. Today I'm going to whip up a simple raspberry tart. I just picked these beautiful raspberries from the patch in my garden, and they are begging to be put into a tart. The tart I'm going to make today is a free-form tart. It's very, very simple, really, including the chilling of the dough, an hour and a half max from the time you put the ingredients together, chilling the dough for an hour to fully baking it. It's really easy. In French, sometimes it's called tarte rustique, tarte rustique. Sometimes here you hear it called a galette. Technically speaking, a galette is a type of crepe that is made with sarrasin, which is to say buckwheat. It's a savory crepe. As opposed to crêpe sucrée, which is sugary, like a Nutella crepe. And but whatever you call it, whether you call it a tart, a free-form tart, a tarte rustique, or une galette, it tastes delicious. So let's get going. Yesterday, I have to admit, I cheated and I made the pâte brisée. And that was so simple. I took a cup and a quarter of flour, and a half a teaspoon of salt and 1 tablespoon of sugar, put it into a food processor, pulsed it once or twice to mix it all up. And then I added a very cold stick of butter. So there are a couple of tricks to making any crust, whether you're making a pie or whether you're making a tarte or whatever. And that is, number one, not to handle it very much. So I don't use one of those pie cutters. I make my crusts. I kind of cheat. I put it in a food processor, but you know, it keeps me from overhandling the flour. The second thing is that the cold ingredients that go into a crust should be very cold. So I keep the stick of butter in the freezer until I need it, because once I go about the business of cutting it up into 1-inch pieces or so, it warms up from my hands. So I keep it in the freezer. And the other thing is that when it comes time to add ice water, I keep the water in my refrigerator very cold until I'm ready for it. And I think that is, it works for me. Or at least those people who eat my tarts tell me that my crusts are very good. So that, I guess, is the true test. So I have been chilling this pâte brisée overnight. Normally it just takes an hour after you've put it together. And truly it comes together in just a few minutes. Wrapped it in plastic, kept it overnight. The chilling process is to keep the butter cold and to let the gluten relax. So it's ready to go. And I've got my parchment paper here. I'm going to just switch the camera down so that you can see what I'm doing as I make the crust. Let me move this because I need to flour the surface. I noticed yesterday it was a little bit sticky, so I'm going to be kind of generous with the flour. It's still sticky right now. I think I put in a little too much water, which, by the way, if you add too much frozen water, or not frozen water, but cold water, you can just add a little flour back in, or flour the disc when you're ready to roll it out. So I've got a piece of parchment paper here, and it's generously floured. I'm throwing some flour on the pâte brisée, and I've got this is a marble rolling pin that I use. I've got a wood one, but I think the marble tends to stick a little bit less. It sticks one way, half a dozen the other. All right, let's do this and see how it goes. So when you roll out a crust, you want to always roll from the center so that it is of even thickness all around. And you can even turn your work surface as you go so that you get a round crust. The beauty of une tarte rustique is that it doesn't really have to be perfectly round. It's a little messy looking, and that is what it's supposed to be. It's kind of the country version of a formalized tart, if you will, which is the fact that it's so easy is why I love it. I have made tarts before and put it in tart pan, and that's fun too. Just takes a little bit more work and more working with the dough. But here I am rolling this out. Got a little more to go. Don't want to get it too thin, but I want to have a good size to mound my raspberries. So literally yesterday, it took me, I don't know, 10 minutes at the most, to put the tart together, the crust. And I'm just rolling the edges here so they don't get too thin, because they will burn, and I want them to be a little bit even. The other thing I keep when I'm rolling out a crust is I keep water, because that water seals dough if you need it sealed. So I'm just gonna make the edges a little bit more edgy. I think rolled it out pretty thin. I'm really liking the shape of this now. It's going to be sort of round, but not completely, and that's okay. I'm going to roll out a little bit more in the middle, because when I eat it, I don't want a big mouthful of crust. I want just the right amount of crust. I think that's good. Now I'm going to leave about 1.5 inch border. I'm not going to put any sugar on the bottom of the crust. And I'm also, the beauty about this kind of tart is you don't have to blind bake the crust. I'm just kind of feeling it here to make sure it all feels about even and it's not too thick anywhere. And now I'm just gonna mound my raspberries. I do not macerate fruit before putting them in a pie or a tart. I like the natural sugar of fruits, and it also makes them a little watery. And if they're tart, they're tart. This recipe also called for sugar on the bottom of the crust. You can for sure do that. I'm not going to, because I'm going to add, you'll see in a minute, I'm going to add sugar on the top just to finish it off. Okay. Now we're ready to fold the crust over. So to do that, we just take one end. And again, I have my water nearby in case I need to seal anything. And there we have it. That's all there is to it. To finish it off, I have a little raw cane sugar, a little turbinado sugar, and I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit on the raspberries themselves, and then sprinkle some on the crust. And then I realized I should have put this on the cookie sheet a little sooner, but I didn't. So we're going to slide this onto the cookie sheet. Voila. And we're done. Put it in the oven at 450 for 20 minutes, or until the the crust is nice and brown, and the raspberries begin to give off their juices. So while the tart is baking, let me go over again the pâte brisée, because I didn't really go into very much detail about it. I started with 1¼ cup of flour, half a teaspoon of salt. I always do a scant half a teaspoon, my preference, and a tablespoon of just regular sugar. And I pulse that once or twice to mix it up. Then I take the very cold, very, very cold stick of butter, cut it into pats of, I don't know, half an inch, and lay that on top in the food processor on top of the flour mixture. And then I pulse that about, 15 seconds until it looks like coarse meal. And again, the trick is not to overprocess, not to handle that flour very, very much, as little as possible. If you overhandle it, it gets tough, and it's just not, flaky and light. It's like a doorstop. So once I have the butter incorporated, and there'll be large chunks in there, you want that. That's okay. In the coarse meal flour. Then you add anywhere from 2 to 4 tablespoons of ice water. And what determines how much is, number one, the humidity in the air. And number two, the humidity, not only outside, but where you're working. And so you want to add, I always start with 2. I start with 2 tablespoons. I pulse it, and I look and see if it's coming together yet. Usually it's not. So then I go by half a tablespoon at a time, and until I'm at 4. And usually by 4, you very, very rarely need more than that. You're looking for, in the bowl of the food processor, you're looking for the dough just to come together. So how long does that take? I don't know. 30 seconds max to bring it together. I always take the top of the food processor off and put my fingers in. And if I can pinch it and it stays together, that's good enough. But once it comes together, I form it into a disc, put it in plastic, stick it in the fridge for an hour or overnight, and then it's ready. I actually have another one to go because it's a gift. For some people who did something really nice for me, and I'm making a tart as a gift for them. So I'll make the second tart now, because why not? The raspberry tart, it smells divine, is baking. And as I said, I was making a second one as a gift. This one is going to be blueberries with sliced nectarines on top. And this one is ready to go. Here is our raspberry tart. Look, let me hang on to the parchment paper here. Here's our raspberry tart. It's beautiful. Oh, wow. Here we have the blueberry tart with the nectarines on top. This looks almost better than the raspberry, I think. They're both going to be wonderful. So there you have it. Tarte rustique. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section, or you can always reach me at lane@parisoffscript.com, where I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'm always happy to share some creative things that are inspired by Paris with you. So that's it for today. See you soon. Bye.